They just don't have it available to the area that they're staying. They have to share the same bathroom that they share, a restroom actually, doesn't even have a bath or a shower. The same restroom that they have to share with the clients. They bathe themselves there. And the conditions are terrible. The sad thing about this we found with the massage parlors is most of the victims, well, I'm going to say most of the victims, all the victims so far that we try to rescue, don't want us to rescue them because they're so afraid of the trafficker. The trafficker keeps their documents. They're afraid what the trafficker may do to their families back home. And then in many cases, the situation that they're currently in is still better than what they left. I had two ladies in San Juan County. The trafficker had the entire massage inside the building completely set up with cameras, was watching the girls the entire time to make sure they would stay there. He kept their documents. He's in jail now, so I can show Steve. And when I talked to them, they were living in a room again. Their room was only about, it was roughly about 6 by 4, 2 adult females living in this room. And they had to sleep head to head, and they would take turns going out, and they were under surveillance constantly. And I said, let me help you, let me move you. Homeland Security, FBI will help us move you to a different state. We'll get you services, we'll get you the services that you need. We'll talk to our attaché in the country you came from, and we'll help your family. Nope, they didn't want help. And it's difficult, and I don't want, my policy, we don't arrest for prostitution. Because we want to identify the victim, and we want to work with them because they're in a situation they didn't ask to be in. In fact, I've never met a prostitute that said, when she was a little girl, that says she wants to grow up and be a prostitute. I've never met a person like that. And I've talked to hundreds of them. Usually they got put in that situation because of a bad family situation, or drugs, or they met someone and they got them addicted to drugs and they're put out in the street. So there are a lot of different reasons, but I've never met anyone that said this is the lifestyle I chose. So our primary objective is victim-centered services to rescue those victims. The massage parlors are difficult. Not going to be impossible. We're going to continue working to see what we can do to save those victims and shut those down. Child pornography is where I started off with the images that were coming in with the ICAC task force, where we started to see that, the images being exchanged, children being groomed, again, eventually being trafficked. So sex trafficking does occur through child pornography, which is why it's important to identify every victim, every image. Sexually oriented businesses, strip clubs. A couple of years ago, we met with all the strip clubs and their owners, brought them into one room, and had some of the dancers there too, the bouncers, everyone, put them all on notice. I go, we're going to be in your club frequently. And it might not necessarily be law enforcement, it may be victim services, but you're going to allow them to go in the back and talk to the girls. And if we find out that someone's being trafficked, we're going to shut you down. And everyone's going to jail. And we had to make that threat because we wanted to keep that element out. And some of the information we're getting as the girls were being rotated in and out of some of the strip clubs. So put a lot of pressure on them, but still doing that actually. But we have our victim services folks that actually go inside the clubs, they'll go in the back, and they will hand out literature to the girls in the back and offer services and let them know that we are available to them. Let me know when time's up. Something happened. I don't see a clock up here and anyone left. So just throw something out. Fake modeling agencies, do they exist in our state? They do. We've seen them as well. Some of the ones we've seen come across on Facebook, which makes it easier for me because I just call Jason and we pull it through legal service and we're able to identify them closely. But we're also seeing them pop up in other places as well. There's other different types of social media platforms the young people may be on, and they're fake modeling agencies. And again, they can bring in young people, even adults, that have been tricked into that. We've had that firsthand. We've had women approached at Target and saying, hey, you're beautiful, you look like you'd be a model. And this one woman actually believed it was a legitimate modeling agency. She contacted them and they tried to traffic her. They ended up sexually assaulting her, and then she was able to provide us information. So it does happen in our state. Again, hospitality and tourist industries, again with sex trafficking. I would say 90% of the sex trafficking that we're seeing in the state right now is happening in the hotels and motels. It's not so much anymore. When I worked Vice, 15 years ago, it used to be that the girls were on the street, the guy would pick them up, and they would do an act in the car, and it was very easy to catch them. But now they're being advertised online, and they're meeting at hotels. Truck stops, I'll talk more about that later, again with the trucking industry, but we are seeing a lot more in truck stops. I guess it was it this year or last year? This year. I brought Truckers Against Trafficking in, and we invited the Truckers Against Trafficking, all truck stop owners and managers, the oil and gas industry, the busing industry. I asked them all to meet with me in one big room for about half a day to educate them on human trafficking and what to look for. And then we gave each one of them literature, DVDs to run in their shops, and we told them how to report and how to talk to some of these girls. We've had some successes with that. And I did that because I did that 4 years ago when I first started developing the trafficking side. And I decided to do it again this year because we have new people and just turnover. And we were starting to see, we would see an increase of tips coming in from the truck stops. Girls get dropped off at these truck stops by traffickers. The girls go from truck to truck offering services as a trafficker watches them from a distance. It's happening in our state. It's happening here in Las Cruces. I spent some time in Las Cruces doing an operation. It's happening right here. So that was important for me to do the truck stop thing. And then, of course, internet-based commercial sex. I just wanted to show you real quick that there's a crossover between labor trafficking and sex trafficking, which I kind of touched on. This is internet-based trafficking. We're actually seeing more and more of that. So I wanted to show you that there is no particular site that's immune from that. We've seen activity just about on every site. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we had over 150 tips last month alone, and that's an average. And that's internet-based. Their activity is seen on the internet of children being enticed.
Internet crimes against children in New Mexico are very real. It's here, and it can mean big business. Starting with conversations that last for weeks, establishing trust, all for the purpose of luring another human being into the underworld of the unspeakable. Freedom doesn't live here. Dignity doesn't either. Just another voiceless statistic.
You be my voice?
Help fight online predators in New Mexico by submitting a tip today.
So every year I write the grant, and every year I set aside about $5,000 because it takes a lot to run a task force to provide equipment and training to keep everybody up to date. I set aside $5,000 to create a PSA, and that's the PSA for this year. And it's only 30 seconds, and then I convinced the movie theaters to run it, ran at 35,000 showings. Over 450,000 people were impacted in Albuquerque and Las Cruces. And so every year I run a PSA. The movie company that put that together for me, they do it for minimal cost. It's almost, in fact, the actors and actresses are all just family members that step in and do that for us. We run that because those are the reports that come in. And I try to do it where I can cover ICAC and human trafficking because our kids are being exploited. These are just some of the sites I wanted to share with you just briefly that we actually see a lot of activity on. If you remember Backpage is a site that got closed down last year. Congress and the FBI put a lot of pressure on them. They were out there providing, Backpage is a place where you could go on there and find women and children and sometimes men who are being advertised for escort and really sex. So it was the central, okay, and that's where it went. Now it's Bedpage, and they went outside the United States, so they think they can get away because of what happened to Backpage. Same exact interface. The format is exactly like it was. They just changed the name. The other place, this corner up here, I just pulled up this morning. That's an escort service for Las Cruces. Okay, and Craigslist. is another place where women and children are advertised as well. And again, this is if you Google this, you'll see this yourself. But I wanted to share this with you because this is right here in Las Cruces. This is the southern part of the state. Okay, the activity is not as high, of course, than it is in the Albuquerque metro area. And then there's sites like Skip the Games. Now, a lot of these sites are definitely out of country, except for Craigslist. But they're very cooperative because they don't want law enforcement to be down their throat. So they are very helpful with us, and it does help. But we've seen the change, right? We've seen the change. They're not in Central anymore where I see the girl walking down the street, or I see a child walking down the street. They're online.
Hey, it's gonna be fun. Come over here.
So, something I did with the educators, because we're seeing trafficking taking place in the cases. So I did a back-to-school training last year. I'll do it again this year. I did one here in Las Cruces. We'll definitely get the word out so you can help us promote it, because I want to fill the auditorium up. These are the human trafficking cases we saw in 2018 through the state of New Mexico. Those numbers seem low to me because we're still getting momentum. People are reporting. We're starting to see more. These are just the numbers where we interacted. We still see, again, hundreds and hundreds of tips. So we look at every single one of them, okay? But these are just something that we looked at from the state level. This is what the New Mexico ICAC Task Force did for 2018. Again, these numbers are, to me, are very alarming. We did 373 search warrants in 2018. So definitely the numbers are pretty high. I like this number, but I want to see it's higher. We identified 1,064 child victims identified with images. So these children are actually identified. That's a plus because we know that child exists and where they're at. So when their image comes up somewhere else in the country, we know we identify them. These are some of our collaborative partners I wanted to share with you. Everyone's involved now. It isn't a law enforcement duty. It isn't just for law enforcement can't do this alone. There isn't enough law enforcement officers to do this job. So we work together as a collaborative effort, and that's what we have listed here. This is a collaborative effort we work together as a team. And you're all part of that. You're here today for a reason. It's not just to hear us talk about human trafficking. It's for you to get involved, okay? Because it's happening, again, in plain sight. That is my contact information, and you can email me or call me at any time if you have any questions, and I'll always be available. Okay, thanks.
Next up is Supervisory Special Agent Minerva. Yeah, Minerva Sullivan. Thank you.